In 1974, your mom could make a dessert that would silence a table of 6 for a full 5 minutes using ingredients that cost less than $1. No stand mixer, no parchment paper, no $30 vanilla extract. Just a box of pudding, a bag of cookies, and 20 minutes. And here is what nobody talks about. Those desserts tasted better than anything you can buy at a bakery today. Number 14 on this list was so popular that Jello had to print the recipe on the back of every box because so many people were calling their customer service line asking for it. Number 3, costs about $4 to make right now, today, and I challenge you to find a bakery dessert that beats it. These 25 desserts did not disappear because they were not good enough. They disappeared because food companies convinced us that cooking meant buying more. Convenience culture ate your grandmother's recipe box alive. Before we start, hit subscribe. What you are about to see might send you straight to your kitchen. Let's count down the 25 forgotten poor man's desserts from the 1970s we need to bring back. Number 25, no-bake chocolate oatmeal cookies. Your mom called them no-bake cookies, but every neighborhood had its own name. Preacher cookies, cow patties, chocolate drops. Whatever you called them, the recipe lived in every church cookbook in America. 2 cups of sugar, half a cup of milk, a stick of butter, and 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder were brought to a rolling boil. Then the heat was cut off, and you stirred in oats, peanut butter, and vanilla. You dropped them by the spoonful onto wax paper and waited. The hardest part was always the waiting. The chocolate smell filled the whole kitchen in under 5 minutes. A batch cost maybe 75 cents in 1975 and made 30 cookies. The trick your mom knew was the timing. Exactly 1 full minute at a rolling boil, or they never set up right. Too short, and you had chocolate puddles. Too long, and they crumbled like sand. That 60-second window was everything. Nobody teaches this anymore. Pinterest replaced it with 5-layer chocolate cakes that cost $18 and take 3 hours. These cookies take 12 minutes and taste like the 1970s felt. Number 24, Watergate salad. Nobody knows where the name came from. Some say it started at a restaurant near the Watergate Hotel. Others say it was invented right as the scandal broke, named as a joke because it was full of nuts and covered something plain. The truth is, it did not matter. What mattered was that 1 box of instant pistachio pudding, 1 tub of Cool Whip, 1 can of crushed pineapple, and a bag of mini marshmallows could turn into the most anticipated dish at any church potluck or 4th of July cookout from 1974 onward. The whole thing took 4 minutes to assemble. That pale electric green color looked like something from outer space. Kids loved it for exactly that reason. You could double the batch for under $3 and feed 30 people. It showed up in community cookbooks printed at the local copy shop, hand-typed and bound with yarn. Food trends have come and gone. This one deserves to come back. Number 23, tapioca pudding. Supermarket shelves still carry it. But your grandmother's version is gone, and the gap between the two is enormous. She cooked it from scratch, stirring small pearl tapioca with whole milk, egg, sugar, and vanilla over low heat for the better part of an hour. It required patience, a wooden spoon, and genuine attention. The pudding turned thick and glossy, studded with those translucent pearls that popped gently against your teeth. Chilled overnight, the whole thing set into something silky and cool. A serving cost maybe 40 cents in 1972. The tapioca pearls came in a small cardboard box that sat in the pantry for months. The instant version that replaced it shares nothing but the name. The texture is different. The taste is thinner. The ritual is gone entirely. There is something to be said for a dessert that requires an hour at the stove. That kind of attention changes how food tastes. Number 22, Brown Betty. Before crumble, before crisp, there was the Brown Betty. It is a baked pudding made from layers of buttered breadcrumbs and sliced apples, sweetened with brown sugar and spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg. The breadcrumbs soaked up the apple juices and caramelized at the edges of the dish, forming a crust that shattered at the spoon. The inside stayed soft and almost custardy. Your mom made it when apples were cheap and bread was going stale. Nothing was wasted. The whole dessert cost less than 50 cents and came out of the oven smelling like an autumn afternoon. Served warm with a splash of cream, it was the kind of dessert that made the whole house feel warmer than it actually was. The Brown Betty predates the 1970s by generations, but it held on through that decade before quietly disappearing behind the rise of the store-bought apple pie. Number 21, Ambrosia salad. Equal parts fruit salad and dessert, and something that does not quite fit either category. Canned mandarin oranges, canned pineapple chunks, coconut flakes, mini marshmallows, and sour cream folded together and chilled overnight. The marshmallows would partially dissolve into the cream, turning soft and pillowy. The coconut absorbed the citrus juice and plumped up. The whole thing smelled faintly tropical and sweet in a way that felt slightly exotic in a Midwestern kitchen in 1973. A family-sized bowl cost $1.50 to make and served 8 comfortably. It showed up at holiday tables and Easter lunches with the reliability of the seasons themselves. Grandmothers kept it in their recipe box under the single word Ambrosia, as if no further description was necessary, as if everyone already knew. Number 20, pineapple upside-down cake. The cast iron skillet lived on the back burner for this one. Your mom melted butter directly in the pan, pressed brown sugar into it, laid maraschino cherries in the center of each pineapple ring, and poured a simple yellow cake batter over the top. When it came out of the oven, she placed a plate over the pan and flipped the whole thing in one motion that required genuine confidence. The caramelized pineapple cascaded down the sides of the cake, sticky and amber, the cherries gleaming like jewels. A can of pineapple rings cost 39 cents in 1971. The whole cake cost under $1.50. It looked like something from a magazine and tasted better. This was poor man's baking at its most dramatic. One flip, and something plain became something beautiful. No baking required. That was the genius. Your grandmother layered graham crackers with whipped cream or Dream Whip and let the whole thing sit in the refrigerator overnight. By morning, the crackers had softened completely, absorbing moisture from the cream until they transformed into something indistinguishable from actual cake. The layers held their shape when sliced, revealing clean, alternating stripes of cream and pale cracker that looked deliberately constructed. Kids watched the refrigerator like hawks, knowing that every hour it sat, the better it got. A box of graham crackers cost 45 cents. The whipped topping was 60 cents. A $1.10 dessert that served a family of 6. The trick was patience, something most of us have lost entirely. Number 18, dump cake. The name did not inspire confidence. The results absolutely did. You spread a can of cherry pie filling in the bottom of a baking dish. A can of crushed pineapple went on top. A dry box of yellow cake mix poured over everything without mixing. Then a full stick of butter, cut into thin pats, was laid across the dry mix to cover it as evenly as possible. Then you walked away. 45 minutes later, the butter had melted down through the cake mix, the fruit had bubbled up through the cracks, and the top had turned golden and crisp in patches. The contrast between crunchy edges and soft fruit center made it something people asked for by name at every potluck from 1972 onward. Total cost in 1974, under $1.50. It may be the most efficient dessert ever invented. Number 17, lemon lush. 4 layers, 0 complicated technique. A crumbly pecan shortbread base pressed into a pan. A cream cheese layer whipped with powdered sugar, spread cool over the crust. Instant lemon pudding made slightly thicker than the box instructed. A final blanket of Cool Whip spread smooth and chilled until firm. Each layer only took a few minutes. The whole thing assembled in 20 minutes and required refrigeration rather than baking to set. The result was cool and creamy and bright with lemon, cutting clean in squares that held their shape perfectly on the plate. At church suppers, it disappeared before anything else. The women who brought it were quietly asked for the recipe. The ingredients cost under $3 for a pan that served 12. It looked elegant in a way that nothing that easy had any right to look. First pattern break. Here is where things get uncomfortable. In 1973, Cool Whip outsold real whipping cream for the first time in American history. Birdseye had hired marketing consultants who told them that convenience could beat flavor if you attached it to the right emotion. Busy mother, modern kitchen, progress. The campaign worked. Within a decade, instant pudding had replaced scratch custard, canned frosting had replaced buttercream, and boxed cake mix had replaced recipes that took 15 minutes to make from scratch. Here's what the food companies never told you. Scratch custard takes 11 minutes on the stove. Real whipped cream takes 4 minutes with a hand mixer. Your grandmother's banana pudding was not replaced because it was too hard. It was replaced because somebody figured out how to sell you a box instead. The desserts on this list survived that campaign in spiral-bound community cookbooks sold for $3 at church fundraisers, because some things are too good to be killed by advertising. Number 16, dirt pudding. Every child of the 1970s remembers the first time they saw this. Crushed Oreo cookies, arranged to look like soil, gummy worms poking through the surface, sometimes served in a clean plastic flower pot with a silk flower stuck in the middle for full commitment to the bit. Underneath the Oreo layer was chocolate pudding, thick and cold, layered with Cool Whip and more crushed cookies in alternating strata. So every scoop got a little of everything. The whole concept was designed for children, and it worked completely. A bag of Oreos was 89 cents. A box of pudding was 40 cents. This was a $1.30 dessert that created a memory so specific that adults decades later can describe exactly whose backyard they ate it in for the first time. Number 15, banana pudding, the real version, not the instant cup from the grocery store. This is the version where your grandmother stood over the stove, stirring egg yolks, sugar, milk, and flour until the mixture thickened into a glossy cream that smelled faintly of butter and vanilla. Nilla wafers lined the dish. Sliced bananas went on top. The hot custard was poured over everything. Then a meringue, beaten stiff with cream of tartar, was spread across the whole thing and browned in the oven until the peaks turned gold. That banana pudding, warm from the oven with the meringue still trembling, was not a budget dessert in the sense of tasting budget. The ingredients were cheap. The result was not. A large dish served 8 people for under $2 in 1973. It required skill. That skill is largely gone now. Number 14, Jello poke cake. This one started on the back of a Jello box in 1969, and by 1975, every home baker in America had made it at least once. You baked a white sheet cake, let it cool partially, then used a wooden spoon handle to poke holes all across the surface in a grid. Then you poured liquid Jello, not yet set, over the top, and let it seep down into every hole. Refrigerate for several hours. The Jello set inside the cake, turning each hole into a pocket of sweet, wobbly color. Topped with Cool Whip, the poke cake looked like something between a dessert and a science experiment. Slice through it, and each piece revealed bright-colored stripes inside white cake. Cherry Jello in vanilla cake was the original. Lime with yellow cake came next. It cost under $2 and required nothing more sophisticated than a baking pan and a wooden spoon. Number 13. No-bake cheesecake. Before cheesecake became a restaurant production involving water baths and precision temperatures, your mom made the no-bake version. 1 package of cream cheese, softened. 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. A squeeze of lemon juice, poured into a graham cracker crust and chilled for 4 hours. The texture was lighter than baked cheesecake, almost mousse-like, and the lemon kept it from being overwhelming. A can of cherry pie filling opened over the top just before serving turned it from a simple dessert into something that looked celebratory. Total cost in 1972 was about $1.75. No oven time, no cracking risk, no springform pan, no previous experience required. The fact that baked cheesecake took over entirely is almost certainly because restaurants could charge more for it. Number 12. Wacky cake. No eggs, no butter, no milk. It sounds like a list of everything cake requires. Dry ingredients go directly into the baking pan. Flour, sugar, cocoa, baking soda, salt. You push 3 wells into the dry mixture. Vegetable oil goes into 1 well, vanilla into another, and white vinegar into the third. Cold water is poured over everything. Stir with a fork until just combined, then bake. The vinegar and baking soda react like a chemistry experiment, providing lift where eggs would normally do the work. The result is a moist, deeply chocolate cake with a fine crumb that is indistinguishable from anything made the conventional way. Depression-era grandmothers passed it down through the 1970s as a backup recipe. Today it would be celebrated as vegan baking. Then it was just smart. Number 11. Oatmeal cake. The frosting was what made it. A simple spice cake built around quick oats soaked in boiling water produced something uniquely moist that stayed soft for days longer than any other cake. Then, while it was still hot from the oven, you made the broiled coconut frosting, made from butter, brown sugar, evaporated milk, shredded coconut, chopped pecans, and vanilla. You spread it thick over the warm cake and slid it under the broiler until it bubbled and caramelized in dark patches across the surface. The oats gave the crumb a slightly chewy texture that paired perfectly with that intensely sweet toasted coconut topping. It tasted better the second day and the third. Oats were one of the cheapest items in any grocery store. A full sheet cake for a church supper cost under $2 and fed 20 people. Nobody thought of it as a budget cake. They thought of it as their grandmother's cake. There is a difference. Number 10. Chocolate cobbler. This one confused people who had never seen it before. You made a thin chocolate cake batter and poured it into a buttered dish. Then you mixed dry cocoa powder and sugar and scattered it over the raw batter without stirring. Then you poured boiling water over the entire thing without stirring that either. Then you put it in the oven and trusted the process. What came out 45 minutes later had separated into 2 distinct layers, a soft chocolate cake on top and a deep, intensely flavored sauce beneath it, bubbling and thick. You scooped it by going through both layers, letting the sauce pool around the cake in the bowl. Served warm with vanilla ice cream, it was one of the most dramatic, most satisfying desserts your mother could make for almost nothing. The result felt like magic every single time. Number 9. Prune cake. Nobody admits to loving prune cake, but they eat every piece. The prunes, simmered and mashed into the batter, add a deep sweetness that makes the spiced cake taste richer and moister than its modest ingredients suggested. The buttermilk glaze, poured hot over the warm cake, soaks into the crumb and creates a surface that is glossy and almost toffee-like. The combination of cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, and the dark fruit against the tang of buttermilk is more sophisticated than the cake's reputation deserves to be. Prunes cost next to nothing. The cake keeps for nearly a week without drying out, which made it the ideal Sunday bake for a household that needed dessert through the whole working week. People who claimed to dislike prunes ate it without complaint and asked for the recipe. Your grandmother knew this. She never told them what was in it until after they had seconds. Second pattern break. Here is what food companies actually did. In 1968, General Mills hired home economists specifically to study why women felt guilty using boxed mixes. The psychologists told them to market boxed cake as helping you add love, rather than replacing skill. It worked. Scratch recipes began disappearing from women's magazines. By 1975, Better Homes and Gardens had quietly reduced its from-scratch dessert section and expanded its easy, entertaining pages, all built around products. A generation of cooks was told their grandmother's methods were outdated, inconvenient, and old-fashioned. The chocolate cobbler that required nothing but pantry staples and an hour of your time was replaced with a product that cost 4 times as much to buy at the store. We were not just sold convenience, we were sold the idea that knowing how to make something from nothing was a limitation. It was not. It was the whole skill. Number 8, tomato soup spice cake. This one sounds like a dare. A can of condensed tomato soup, undiluted, stirred directly into spice cake batter, replacing the liquid and fat in one strange step. Campbell's printed the recipe on the can itself, starting in 1928, and it survived all the way through the 1970s. The tomato did not make the cake taste like soup. What it did was add acidity that activated the baking soda and created a fine, even crumb. The natural sweetness of cooked tomato enhanced the brown sugar and cinnamon. The texture was impossibly moist. Topped with cream cheese frosting, it tasted like an expensive bakery spice cake. Told the truth about what was in it, most people did not believe you. Food companies eventually stopped printing the recipe because they wanted to sell more soup, not explain that soup had non-soup uses. Your grandmother kept making it anyway. She knew what worked. Number 7, rice pudding. The smell of it cooking was unmistakable. Rice and whole milk simmered together on the stove for the better part of an hour, the liquid thickening and the rice swelling until the mixture became dense and creamy. Sugar and vanilla were stirred in toward the end. A dusting of cinnamon went over the top before it chilled. A pound of long-grain rice cost about 30 cents in 1970 and could fill a family-sized bowl. It was warm in winter, served from a pot on the stove. It was cool and soothing in summer, served chilled from the refrigerator. It asked for almost nothing and gave back complete comfort. The version with a raisin stirred in halfway through was either the best thing you had ever eaten or a personal betrayal, and that debate has never been fully settled. Number 6, bread pudding with vanilla sauce. Stale bread was not wasted, it was the beginning. Your grandmother saved every end slice, every 2 dry dinner roll, every piece of bread going stiff in the bag until there was enough to fill a baking dish. She poured a custard of eggs, whole milk, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla over the bread, pushed everything down until it soaked through, and let it sit 20 minutes before it went into the oven. An hour later, the top was puffed and golden. and the inside soft and custardy, the bread having completely surrendered its original form. The vanilla sauce, Applesauce, made from butter, sugar, egg, and vanilla cooked together on the stove, was poured warm over each serving. The cost was essentially the eggs and milk, since the bread was already accounted for. It was the original zero-waste dessert, and it still tastes better than food that costs 20 times more. Number 5. Cherry Delight. 4 ingredients assembled in layers and chilled. A graham cracker crust pressed into a 9 by 13 pan. A cream cheese layer whipped smooth with powdered sugar, then folded together with Cool Whip until light. A layer of cherry pie filling spread in an even, gleaming, deeply red sheet over the top. Nothing was cooked. Nothing required precise timing. A pan of Cherry Delight for a church supper of 30 people cost under $4 in 1976. It could be made the night before and kept in the refrigerator until serving. People asked for it by name. Community cookbooks from the period, the spiral-bound kind sold at elementary school fundraisers, listed it under a half-dozen names: Cherry Dream, Cherry Cloud, Cherry Cheesecake Delight. The name changed. The recipe never did. Number 4. Applesauce Cake. The applesauce did 2 things. It replaced most of the fat, and it kept the cake moist for an extraordinary length of time. A simple spice batter with a full cup of unsweetened applesauce produced something that tasted distinctly of autumn, even in the middle of July. The cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg were amplified by the apple base. A jar of applesauce cost 30 cents in 1972. The whole cake cost under $1. It kept on the counter for 5 days without drying out. It came from a long tradition of wartime baking that stretched fat with fruit, and it arrived in the 1970s still carrying that DNA of thrift while tasting like it had been made in abundance. Served with cream cheese frosting or plain with powdered sugar, it was proof that restraint in the ingredients produced generosity on the plate. 7 layers, 1 pan, no mixing bowl. Your mom pressed a graham crust into a buttered pan. She poured a can of sweetened condensed milk evenly over the crust. She scattered chocolate chips, butterscotch chips, shredded coconut, and chopped walnuts. She did not stir anything. The oven did the rest. The condensed milk seeped up through all the layers and bound everything into a single unified slab of caramelized, chewy, crisp-edged richness. Eagle Brand printed this recipe on their cans, and it became one of the most reproduced recipes in American baking. A full pan of 48 bars cost under $2.50 in 1975. Today, the same recipe appears on blogs under elaborate names and gets labeled a gourmet treat. Your grandmother made it on a Tuesday afternoon and brought it to the school bake sale in a covered dish. Before magic cookie bars, there were dream bars. The base was a brown sugar shortbread pressed flat and baked until barely set. Over that went a filling of eggs, brown sugar, coconut, vanilla, and chopped nuts, poured over the warm crust and returned to the oven until the top set into a chewy, golden, caramelized layer that smelled like a candy factory and tasted like something a stranger would ask you about at a party. The contrast between the crisp, buttery base and the yielding, toasted coconut top was the entire point. Community cookbooks from every state between 1965 and 1985 carry some version of this recipe under a dozen different names, but the structure is always the same: shortbread below, coconut caramel above, and a result that disappears from every plate it lands on. This was the dessert that showed up when someone really wanted to be remembered. A thick graham cracker crust was pressed into a deep pie dish and baked until golden. A homemade vanilla custard was poured in while still warm with sliced bananas folded through. It was chilled until set. Then it was topped with a full inch of sweetened whipped cream, allowed to brown very slightly under the broiler until just a few peaks turned caramel-colored, and then returned to the refrigerator to firm up. The result had 4 distinct textures in every forkful: the crunch of the crust, the give of the banana, the silk of the custard, and the lightness of the cream. The whole pie cost under $2 to make in 1971. It required 2 hours of patience and 1 piece of real skill: the custard, which could curdle if you were not paying attention. Women who could make it consistently were remembered for it specifically. Not as a baker, not as a cook, as the woman who made that pie. That kind of reputation cannot be bought. Those are your 25 desserts. Some of them, like the dump cake and the poke cake, take under 5 minutes to assemble. Others, like the scratch banana pudding and the rice pudding, ask for your time and attention in a way modern recipes have stopped doing. But here's the thing: the time is part of the recipe. Standing at a stove for an hour produces something different than pressing a button. Pick one this week. Make the Wacky cake with no eggs and no butter, and see if your family notices. Make the chocolate cobbler and watch someone's face when you pour boiling water over the dry cocoa without stirring. Tell me in the comments which one you try. Tell me if anyone asks for the recipe. Because these were not just desserts, they were what the table meant.